Good morning, good afternoon, and or good evening, wherever you may be and wherever you're receiving this audio. Welcome to the first episode, hopefully the first of many episodes of the Busted Coverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nicholas Persampieri. Along with my co-hosts, we have Cam Griffin and Matt Baywood, and we're not going to waste any of your time. We want to get right into the content, and we're going to start off with the aftermath of Super Bowl 59. My Philadelphia Eagles, go Birds, took down the Kansas City Chiefs and prevented the three-peat by a score of 40-22, with Jalen Hurts taking home the MVP after a three-touchdown performance. So I'm going to open the floor up to you guys. Impact of this game for both teams, and where you guys see both the Eagles and Chiefs going forward. So whoever wants to take over, by all means, floor is open.
Cam, I'll go first.
There.
Okay.
I think this was a big defining moment for the Chiefs, obviously, because they had the chance to three-peat. They would have been the first team in the Super Bowl era to do that. Pat Mahomes played absolutely awful. It wasn't all necessarily his fault. A lot of it was play calling. The Eagles were just a better team overall. Where the Chiefs would be going, it really depends on if Kelsey stays, if they can retain any of their receiving group right now because they're very slim in that department. They need a running game. Pacheco was in and out of the lineup all season. He was actually out of the lineup for most of the season. They picked up Kareem Hunt. He's a free agent. Can they retain him? Overall, the Eagles, it was Nick and I discussed this for weeks ahead of time. We both thought that it was going to be, we didn't think it was going to be close. Nick had it nailed down to a T. He said that they were going to win by 2 scores. I took the safe route and just took the spread. And Jalen Hurts looked phenomenal. That offense looked unstoppable. Their defense took over in basically the second half of the season. They were a little iffy in the beginning, and then they just took off. So the Eagles really impressed me through the second half of the season. It became like the best defense in football. But overall, it was very disappointing for the Chiefs. I know everybody was happy to see that. We didn't get to see Taylor Swift on the screen practically at all. And we're all happy campers in this group. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I think that's a good question brought up by Nick. Is where do you go from here? You know, you look at the Chiefs roster, and by no means did they have a bad team. They led the league in a lot of great categories, um, but it wasn't good enough. And I think all the talk all year, when you tell somebody you're going to do something and you're going to win something, you just motivate the other team, and that's exactly what we saw happen. And what the Eagles even came out and said, like, you're counting us out before we even got in the game. And I thought, where do we go from here? Well, I think the Eagles repeat. I don't see anybody beating that team right now, as presently constructed. The Chiefs, I think, have a lot of questions. You arguably have the best quarterback. You arguably had a top defense. You arguably have a great coach, and you got laughed off the field. So I think they've got a lot of soul searching and questions they need asked. They need answered. Does Travis Kelsey come back? In the grand scheme of things, does that even make a difference? It wasn't like he was lighting it up this year anyway. I think they have a lot of questions they need answered. Their play calling was atrocious. It was hard to watch at one point.
Yeah.
As a football fan, the game was just hard to watch. Obviously, if you're in Philadelphia, it was easy to watch. And I know Nick was screaming every 30 seconds how happy he was, especially when Cooper DeJean got the pick six.
That was huge.
But it was
Oh,
huge. But
God.
if you're a Chiefs fan, I think you really have to dig deep and say, well, we had a good team. How do we get a great team? But I think some trades are going to have to be made and some jobs are going to have to be lost because you can't come back with that same team and think that you're going to run it back.
Well,
That to me is not going to work.
so what was really impressive to me about the Eagles win was not only obviously the pick six was just like there was no momentum to begin with, but that was, if there was any momentum for the Chiefs, it absolutely killed it. But what impressed me was that we knew that Saquon was going to be held to a minimum. or at least they were going to try to stop him from running all over them. And not only did Jalen Hurts outrun Saquon, but he had less than half of his carries, and he still had more yards than him. So Jalen was making, compared to the last Super Bowl where he didn't protect the ball quite as well. I mean, the Chiefs' defense is practically the same. Obviously, they've had some moving pieces, but in terms of like quality of defense, the Chiefs' defense this year was practically the same as when they faced each other 2 years ago. But Jalen Hurts made some incredible steps, and obviously Saquon being there carrying the team the majority of the season, Jalen didn't have to quite rely on himself as much. He could rely on Saquon, but when it mattered most, Jalen showed up, and that speaks a lot to him.
You know, and I will say, I'll point out also, too, on this, and I think, Matt, you and Nick have said it most Sundays when we're watching football is, you know, who is Patrick Mahomes actually throwing the ball to? You know, if you go down the list and you see where the targets were on this game, I think it gives a good thumbs up to the Eagles defense looking at it, because Kelsey only had 4 receptions for 40 yards. So virtually not really an impact on the game. DeAndre Hopkins, who we hadn't seen in the playoffs and God knows how long, who we hoped would do really well, only had 2 receptions for 18 yards. One of your favorite players out of Pittsburgh, Juju Smith-Schuster, 2 receptions for 16 yards.
Don't go there. He's not nearly anywhere. What do you mean one of my favorite players? Don't go there.
I just did that because we're being recorded, and I wanted to keep that on there and stick it in the side.
I know damn well he is not one of my favorite players.
That's why I said it. But just going down it, there's outside of Xavier Worthy, nobody really had an impact on this game.
Xavier Worthy was in garbage time.
What?
Xavier Worthy was only good in garbage time. Let's be real.
Well, touche, but you know he did help put up 22 points to make it a little less embarrassing.
Yeah, that's like Dak Prescott, bro. It's a you know, come from behind type situation when you're already blown out. They have their backups in.
I get that, but we'll get to Dak Prescott another week. Trust me, we'll get to the Cowboys.
That's your boy.
But that is not my boy. But yeah, you flip to the Eagles, and you know what? Nick knows how I feel about Jalen Hurts. I got to give him his hats off, and congratulations on his MVP. And you know, he really proved a lot of doubters wrong.
Nick,
I'm gonna accept the compliment on behalf of Jalen Cam. Thank you.
Nick, share your thoughts since you're the only Eagle fan in the group.
So going off of again what Matt had said before, I saw this coming. I know it doesn't sound like it because you know we're just all so smart at predicting these things, but I thought, you know, even though the Chiefs had won 15 games in the regular season, they did not look impressive. They weren't dominant. You mentioned the Eagles lost 1 game since week 4. And that was to the Commanders, where Kenny Pickett played 3/4 of the game. So I knew this team would bounce back perfectly fine. Did I expect them to score 55 points against the Commanders in the NFC title game? No. But I figured we'd win that game. But this one, I said 2 touchdowns from the very beginning. I just don't think, and just to piggyback off of stats here, as a team, the Chiefs ran for 49 yards.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of how far the game evolves, you have to be able to run the football. Period. The Ravens are very effective at it. The Bills are a great running football team. But the Eagles were the best. And just Saquon, yes, was stymied a little bit because the defensive game plan was 26. Find them, bring them down. And because of that, it opened up the rest of the field for Hurts and the passing attack. So next year, we'll see what happens. We have a new OC. But like I said, I do think the Eagles are primed for the next 3 to 5 seasons for greatness. And in terms of the Chiefs, you know, I think they're still going to hang around. But they got a lot of soul searching to do, like Cam said. They need some upgrades on the offensive line. And they got to commit to running the football. It's going to prolong Patrick Mahomes' window at the top. So
The only thing
We'll
is,
see.
I hope like when Kenny Pickett got the fact that you brought Kenny Pickett up actually just like I had to mute my mic because I was actually pissed. I forgot that Kenny Pickett has a Super Bowl ring, especially
Yes,
the
he does.
year after he got traded, or the year that he got traded from the Steelers to the Eagles.
Yeah.
I would have been my wallet would have won either way because there's no way that the Chiefs are going to win that game. But
No.
Kenny Pickett, if he threw a pick six when it looked very much so that he was going to, I would have been ecstatic.
Yeah, for all those
But
people that are going to be listening,
just like Kenny,
Matt
he
is a
always
Pittsburgh
disappoints.
Steelers.
Yeah, I am a Steelers fan. It hurts because we get to the playoffs and we lose immediately. But Kenny Pickett, come on, man.
That was going to be my parting shot to Matt when we closed out this subject. So I'm a little upset that he pulled it out beforehand, but I'll live with it.
Nick had to mention it. I can't stand him. I didn't like him at Pittsburgh.
Well, he actually played well against the Commanders and the Cowboys
The
when he got
Commanders
his
have
chance.
St. Jude's.
Hey, you know what? Smitty catches that ball. We beat the Commanders 3 times. That's all I'm gonna say. No fault on Devontae Smith. He's still skinny Batman. So we're all good.
Love Jaden Daniels. Love that offense. They've had weapons for years without a quarterback.
Absolutely.
Their defense is garbage.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Matt, because I want to transition this topic. I know we just talked about this year's Super Bowl, and of course, next year's Super Bowl is about a year away. So it's right around the corner. I just want to bring up the next question of who do we think is going to be in the Super Bowl next year? Cam, I know you mentioned a possible repeat for the Eagles. I am kind of in the same camp, depending on some certain things. But let's start with you, Cam. Who do you think is there and why?
I think the NFC comes down to how much the Eagles will retain off of this current team. At all positions, whether it's coaching, O-line, D-line, receivers, whatever the position may be. Because I know you already lost. Was it Kellen Moore?
Yes, Kellen Moore is now the head coach of the Saints.
Yeah. So I think how much you can retain and what the next year's scheme is going to look like. Having said that, I still don't see anybody in the NFC who's going to beat them. I think Washington is on the come up, but I don't think next year is the year either. I do think another good year for Jaden Daniels. I do think that the AFC is a bit more wide open, but at the same time, I think it will come down to Baltimore and Buffalo going at each other to see who will get that final spot in to face the Eagles. And I have to say, I know he's a 2-time MVP, but I think Baltimore is going to fall to Buffalo. So I would say Buffalo versus the Eagles as your Super Bowl next year.
And just before you go, Matt, just to give an update, the Eagles have promoted Kevin Patullo, who was he's been our passing game coordinator for 4 years, so he is now the offensive coordinator. So we're keeping him in house. So hopefully that's a good sign. So just want to throw that nugget.
We can't forget about Detroit. I am slightly leaning towards the Eagles just because if they retain, the majority of their team, they're just they have a young team. Basically, the Georgia Bulldogs defensive line. I mean, they're just full of dogs. But let's not forget that the Detroit made it to the playoffs and an incredible season with people that were working at Walmart. They had 24 players on injured reserve. I mean, that offense is explosive, and they lost. Yeah, their offense is explosive. Hopefully, they can retain the majority of the people. I personally like the Lions. I want them to succeed. It's refreshing to see them in the spotlight. Dan Campbell's he turned around that franchise for sure. What a great coach that is. But we can't forget about them, especially if their team is going to be coming back healthy. On the AFC, I think Buffalo is definitely, it might be the favorite. I think the Chiefs are going to take. I don't even think the Chiefs are going to make the AFC Championship next year. I think this is going to be Pat Mahomes' first time not making it. But I'm going to lean towards Buffalo right now, but I think the NFC is going to win the Super Bowl, whether it's Detroit or the Eagles, one of the two.
In their early picks, I mean, like you were saying off air, there's a lot to be desired still, with the draft and the offseason free agency. So going off of now as teams presently constructed, I do think the Bills will be the ones playing the Eagles next year.
All right. I mean, that's quite the upper. He better get there. That's all I would say. So, which is, I mean, I hate to make that comment early. So, now that we know who we think can make it, I also have the Eagles repeating next year. I just want to maybe ask, who do you guys think is under the most pressure to get to the Super Bowl next season?
I'll take this one.
And you can pick any team or any conference. Just the field question there.
I have one from each conference. Number one, I have Lamar. Specifically, just Lamar.
Mm-hmm. Baltimore, gotcha.
Yeah. He's a multiple-time MVP at this point, but he always falls short in the playoffs. They pretty much have a resounding good defense. This year they took a step back in terms of that. However, they moving Hamilton around in the secondary really kind of sparked that defense to play lockdown this pretty much the second half of the year, but it was really leaning towards the last 5-6 games. But when you have a Derrick Henry, I know Zay Flowers was banged up towards the end of the year, but when you have Derrick Henry and the ability of Lamar to run, and you can only beat the Steelers, then what are we really saying about that team? We always have them in, one of the top 2 or 3 teams of the AFC to make it to the Super Bowl, but it always comes around and sort of haunts Lamar in the playoffs. He doesn't play naturally well in those situations. Number 2, I don't think there's any pressure on Jared Goff, but I think there's pressure on the 49ers to get there, being that they spent a boatload of money on, they signed Debo. I know they're talking about trading him, but they have Kittle, they have McCaffrey when he's healthy. They have some Garendo's good as a backup. I forget their second string backup, but Mason, I think it was. He performed really well. I mean, that offensive line is just diesel. They have Brandon Ayuk, who held out the entire offseason. Jennings is a good player. I think I mentioned Kittle already, but he's a top tight end. They have a star-studded team. I think their quarterback is pretty mid. Brock Purdy definitely impressed for being a last pick in the draft. But, Kyle Shanahan's really got to prove himself.
So
right. Yeah, Cam, up to you.
Yeah, no. So I'm with Matt. I was actually thinking Lamar also. I don't know if we've ever seen a team or a player drop off in the playoffs as bad as he has. When we looked at Josh Allen, we've always said, well, it wasn't his fault. His defense didn't show up. The NFL rule had to be changed. We've never blamed him. Joe Burrow's past has gotten there. Patrick Mahomes has done it. There are really no other quarterbacks we're looking at now in the AFC. So the only one who we rave about potentially being the best quarterback in Lamar Jackson hasn't even gotten a sniff of what the Super Bowl is, let alone the AFC Championship game. And when the chips have been down, he's not played well. The offense is built around him. We had 2 tight ends. Yes, this year, Mark Andrews didn't catch the ball. I get it. A lot of drop passes from their team. Those aren't on him. But he had 3 turnovers himself in that game. And the only reason we're not talking about those is because Mark Andrews did drop the ball at the most inopportune time. I think there's the most pressure on him, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. And I think we're going to have to start asking questions about Baltimore if they don't get there next year. Even though I'm picking the Bills, I think it will hurt Lamar's legacy if he cannot get to at least an AFC championship game or a Super Bowl.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he make it to the AFC championship game last year and lost to the Chiefs?
Yes, he did, but he played awful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the point, he's got to play well in the playoffs.
Gotcha.
Let's just put it that way. You're right. He did make it. That's my fault.
Only one, though.
A team that I'm going to go a different route a little bit. A team that I think is under a lot of pressure next year, even though you probably wouldn't think it, is I'm going to say Detroit. Detroit won 15 games this year, I believe. And like Matt said, their defense was plug and play. At one point, was it 16 defensive players on injured reserve?
Yeah.
Double digits, we'll say, to be safe.
Something like that.
Your best.
Oh, yeah.
They were picking up undrafted free agents like it was their job.
Exactly. And they still found a way to win 15 games. You know, they have a young team. They have a good team. The problem is that the Eagles also have a young team and they have a good team. The Commanders have a young team and they have a good team. So the pressure is going to have to still be on a team that's really good because you still have to win. And eventually they're going to have to sign some of those players and extend them. So while they don't have to do that right now, I think the pressure is on them because once you start winning, people want money.
Good news for Detroit is that they have a big salary cap this offseason, so they could do a couple more adjustments.
Exactly.
Washington has a massive salary cap. I know they have an also like absurd amount of free agents that are coming out this season. So I mean, I'm hoping most of those are on the defense.
Yeah. So I think low key, I think there's pressure on Detroit. You know, Jared Goff has been in the Super Bowl before. He was traded away so the team could win a Super Bowl. So I know he feels that pressure on him to get back there and justify that he was not the reason, which I do not believe he was the reason. But I think Detroit has a little pressure on it. And now we have expectations for Detroit. We haven't had expectations for them in a long time. So pressure would be on them. Even though I don't have them beating the Eagles, I still think the pressure is on them to at least get there or get as far as they can before they face the Eagles.
So I hate to put my 2 cents in, but I want to be involved in this. So I'm actually going to pick someone different from the AFC that I know his greatness is there, but I fear that he may kind of fall out of the light a little bit when he's compared to Mahomes and Allen. I'm going to say the person under the most pressure next year is Joe Burrow.
I agree in a sense.
The reason I'm going to go with that is if you think about the core 4 quarterbacks in the NFL, at least the last few seasons, it's been Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Burrow. Burrow was the one who beat Mahomes at Arrowhead to go to the Super Bowl and then lost. He's coming off injuries, and now you have the situation with the money with T. Higgins and Chase and Hendrickson and stuff. He just won Comeback Player of the Year. I know Cam is a pro Joe Burrow man. You can make an argument that he played at an MVP clip, but the wins are what matter. And I fear that if he's not in that, contention, if he doesn't bring his team back to the deep playoff run, he might fall out of that upper echelon when clearly he's a top 3 quarterback in the league.
I was going to say, we got to pump the brakes on that.
Yeah.
They need to find a way to retain both T. Higgins and Jamar Chase to keep that team relevant because they have a decent salary cap, but it's going to be eaten by their contracts.
I think we were talking about it too, and I think, and I would just push back on Nick a little bit, and not a lot, because I 100% agree with everything Nick is saying. The only reason and I know we're going to say Joe Burrow has a lot of pressure on him. The only reason I'm going to say the pressure is not on Joe Burrow next year is because next year is so up in the air. It's the ball is in management's court at this point with the Bengals. Joe has already said he'd give some money, whatever he can, restructure to get T. Higgins to sign. But we all know that defense was doo-doo. I think it was NFL Live or Get Up where they made the comment. They're like, if you score 30-something points in an NFL game, you should win the game most of the time if you have a decent defense.
Would he have like 5 or 6 losses plus 34
they had
points?
Like NFL record for 7 losses when the opposing team when you score 40-something points and the opposing team beat you. That defense is priority number 2 behind T. Higgins. But it's all stuff that's out of Joe Burrow's control. He had a phenomenal season with no defense. They came within a game of making the playoffs. Now, had the Chiefs not sat their starters, do we know what would have happened? No. Are we okay with that? That's the way the NFL goes. You should have won your games at the beginning of the season. You wouldn't have to worry about it. But that's the only reason I would say I don't think the pressure's on Joe Burrow until we see what front office does with the Bengals. And then if they don't... He's
never had an O-line and he's never had a defense.
Yeah, but he's had receivers. And if you take one away and you take the few defensive players they do have, because I know Pratt requested a trade, and if you can't sign Hendricks, then we're going to have a lot more questions. But then the pressure is going to be on Joe Burrow. Do you stay in Cincinnati?
Well, we've seen this before. The Steelers had Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Martavis Bryant, a slew of different tight ends. And they had no defense for years. And, yeah, they could put up 40 points, but they lost to Jacksonville with Blake Bortles, like 45 to 42. You need to have something on defense to at least a defensive line to be able to, like, disrupt something. They have one player on their defensive line that could really disrupt. I don't even think DJ Reader's there anymore, and he was like the biggest run stuffer I've ever seen, at least in the AFC North in at least 10 years.
Well, and that's the problem, because now you got to start signing people and re-signing people, and the few steps forward you made, you now have to take a few back. There aren't many. I think there's only 4 or 5 key players back from that team that went to the Super Bowl, and everybody else is a plug and play. So, again, I do think Joe Burrow has enough pressure, but I don't know how much pressure we can put on him until we see what that roster looks like in training camp. Because if let's say they lose T. Higgins, are we really going to fault Joe Burrow if they don't get back with just Jamar Chase and really nobody else? And the defense isn't that good?
I mean, I don't think and I said, I'm not saying pressure as in his ability on the field. I just worry about his perception, about being basically kind of lost in the weeds when being compared to those other top quarterbacks.
And I get that.
If the Bengals won 2 more games, we'd be having a conversation whether it was going to be Lamar, Josh Allen, or Joe Burrow in the MVP.
Burrow for MVP, yeah.
Yeah.
Because let's be real, we had Sam Darnold up in that conversation for 13 out of the 15 or 17 games.
Well, I was an advocate of Sam Darnold getting comeback player of the year, being that nobody knew where the hell he was the last 3 years, and had a phenomenal year this year and may have earned himself a very nice offseason contract.
He also just killed his offseason contract by at least $10 million the last 2 games of the season.
Well, yeah, true, but it's still more than he would have been paid.
That's a fact.
Yeah, and then I think from the NFC, I have a tie for 2 quarterbacks. One is Brock Purdy, only because of the perception thing of the 49ers. When he came in, they go to the Super Bowl, they go to the NFC title game. He's going to get an extension, even though I may not completely agree with it. But if they don't make the playoffs this year, that team's getting blown up. If they don't move pieces already this offseason. So I think he has to perform. And then I can't believe I'm saying this, but Jalen Hurts. The reason being, again, now you're being put in that upper echelon, potentially by some, not everybody. But now you're truly being compared to the best of the best. If you don't make it back, is this a fluke? Plus, you got Jaden Daniels coming up. Detroit's still great. You still have Josh Allen, Lamar that are going to be hungry. So I think there is still a lot riding on Jalen Hurts to try to replicate what he did this postseason. And if he doesn't, the questions are coming right back. So
I'm going to push back on you slightly on that, just because he has been in 2 of the last 3 Super Bowls. So he's able to get back, or he was able to get to the Super Bowl with less of a team 2 years ago.
yeah.
This year he had, obviously, the best team.
He had
probably one of the best teams I've ever seen, to be honest. That team, the construction of that team was incredible. You could, there's stars everywhere, even if they're rookies.
Right. But to counter that point, yes, he got there in 22. 2023, with the same team, we saw what happened, and we saw how he played.
Wasn't there a coordinator issue, though?
Well, yeah, but again, we're having a coordinator issue again, right? We're having a new one. So we have to kind of see what happens. It could be history repeating itself. So that's why I kind of worry that, the narrative was that Saquon Barkley took over and was this amazing, had this historic season, which he did. Can Jalen Hurts be the man for 17 games? I don't think he's truly answered that yet, even though I'm in his camp. I think he can.
I don't think he has to.
Yeah, right. I don't think he has to, and the team is built so he won't have to. The only way I think we're going to look at Jalen Hurts and ask that question is if Saquon gets hurt and he's out for a good chunk of the year. And then I think we're asking that question, well, can Jalen Hurts, is he really who we thought he was?
Mm-hmm. And now the target's on his back as the defending champ.
Exactly. But even no matter how big that target is on his back, he is not the first person you're stopping on that offense. That first person is Saquon Barkley. He is at the top of the board. I think you're still at a point where you want Jalen Hurts to beat you. You'd rather
put the ball in the Alabama quarterback's hands. That's usually how you win games.
He's from Oklahoma.
Didn't he play in Alabama too?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
He was taken out of that game for Tua. Let's get that right.
Don't get me started on Tua. We have to save that for another week because that's an hour at least.
But I think that's the only way we're going to look at him, and is if something happens to one of their receivers or their running back, and then more pressure is put on him. But I don't think we're going to be at a point where we're going to look at Jalen Hurts and go, you need to do better. I don't think he's ever going to be talent-wise where those other quarterbacks are. But I think at the end of his career, when it's all said and done, his name could be with them when it comes to Super Bowls. But I don't think we're going to look at it the way this team is presently constructed and say, well, go take us there. I'd be foolish to do that. You've got 2 dynamic receivers, at least, minimal. You've got a running back who is arguably the best running back in the league. And you have a quarterback who is not a top 5 or 6 quarterback, but he doesn't need to be. He needs to be what his team needs him to be, and that's just make good decisions, move the ball, and give it to Saquon. And when he tries to do more than that, that's when I think the Eagles get into trouble.
The Eagles are exactly what we expected the 49ers to be.
Oh, yeah, and that's my other thing. I will say this, and I 100% agree with you as Brock Purdy has a lot of pressure on him. Because Brock Purdy, if you look at the roster he has some of the best players in the league in the NFL in the last few years on his roster. We do not need him to do more. I shouldn't say we because I'm not really a fan, but they do not need him to do any more than the basic stuff. And they still have a terrible record when that roster is not 100% intact. And I think that San Francisco there's a few people who have some answers to explain. Brock Purdy to me is one of them, because when chips are down, there are just throws he cannot make. And their offensive coordinator is Kyle Shanahan, right? You need to explain. Is it Shanahan?
I think
Shanahan's
he's the main play caller.
Yeah,
he's the main play caller. Yeah,
you need to explain to me why, when Christian McCaffrey is out, your offense looks like trash, and you knew he was going to be out. You couldn't do anything better. I get Ayuk tore his Achilles, his ACL. Oh, Achilles, my bad. And then he without. But you had Kittle, you had Debo, you have other receivers who were good. You had a good defense, and you're still losing games. You're at what, sub 500 for a good chunk of the year. We've got questions. I think Matt was right. They've got a lot of pressure on him, but Brock Purdy has a lot of questions on him too. Do you sign him to that contract? Has he earned that contract, or do you just not want to pay somebody else?
I think that system is really built for any quarterback, because we could see maybe Trey Lance, but I think if you put any quarterback, like if you put Sam Darnold in that system, he would succeed. If you put Zach Wilson in that system, he would probably succeed.
Well, let's not forget Sam Darnold was in that system. He was the backup.
Yeah, but he didn't get any time.
No, I know, but I'm just saying he was the backup. So I just meant
instead of like if they were gonna start a new quarterback and you put Sam Darnold in there, I think he would succeed, just based off of the fact that he was in a kind of similar system.
Yeah.
In Minnesota this year, less of a run heavy offense for sure, but he showed he showed his throwing ability, where we always thought that he was deer in headlights, but he played for two really struggling franchises, to say it nicely.
Well, I told Nick at Michael's Tap Room, Bethel, Connecticut, plug.
Please sponsor us.
I said that Justin Jefferson and Addison would revive his career and get him paid.
This could be a topic for another discussion.
It's about to be happening, yes. But that, just go back on that San Francisco comment just real quick. What I said also was, I still to this day believe Aaron Rodgers should have gone to San Fran and not the Jets, and we would not be having this conversation, because 49ers would have been a completely different team than they are currently right now.
As much as I would love to see Justin Fields re-sign with the Steelers, I would think that he could thrive in that system somehow.
It boggles my mind. You have Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and Kittle, and you can't win a big game.
And they paid Ayuk like he was the number one, but then he got hurt.
So I think you're right. I think we'll have to see what this fall holds, what this training camp holds. Ayuk will be back. He was scheduled to be at least 90% healthy by preseason. I'm not sure he'll play in a preseason game, but he'll be ready for week 1. And then I want to see what happens with Debo.
Yeah,
do you find a trade? What do you get for him? And what do you do with McCaffrey?
Yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot that's going to play out for sure.
Yeah.
And hopefully a year from now we can talk about what we got right. So we'll see what happens, man. We will see. But I know we mentioned Jalen Hurts in Alabama and Oklahoma. I think that's a good transition point here, because speaking of other playoff things and things of that nature, this past season we saw a change in the college football playoff format, where they expanded to 12 teams, and there was a little bit of teams that should have been in, should not have been in, where they were placed. And we also saw pretty much the dissolving of a power conference in the Pac-12. So I just want to open this up to, do we like it? Do we agree with the committee? I think most of us are going to say no, but we'll at least put it out there. And do we want to see it expanded or reduced, the format? So whoever wants to start with this forum, floor is open.
I'll start with it. I like the 12 team. I was very against it originally. I thought 4 was fine. Hell, I didn't mind the BCS, if we're going to be realistic about it. But I thought 12 teams was too many, but after watching it, I think some of the matchups we got were phenomenal. 12 was the right number. I think the committee got some of the teams right, but they went back and forth on putting certain teams in versus other teams, and I think that's where they messed up. Full disclosure, I respect a lot of conferences, but I will always have an SEC bias because they've proven to show that when big games happen, they're ready to win them. Now, having said that, they lost a lot this year. I'm sorry, but in the history of it, they step up to the plate. I did not like the fact that Clemson was a Power 5 winner or a Power 4 winner and did not get a home game. And the runner-up in their conference got a higher seed than they did. So I think there's still stuff that needs to be worked out when it comes to who goes where and who hosts what games. But I had no problem with 12 teams right now, and that's how I'll start it. So, Matt, what did you think?
Yeah, I'm just going to briefly speak on this, and then I'm going to open the broader conversation so Nick and you can go back and forth at it. I definitely enjoyed the 12-team format. I always thought that the college football playoffs were just a little too short with the 4-team setup. I definitely enjoyed the new setup. Just more football is just better for everybody. I thought Alabama specifically should have been in over SMU because they had way more quality wins. I also have an SEC bias. I've been pounding the table. Obviously disappointed that SEC didn't pull it off this year, but I think Alabama had some way better quality wins in terms of against top 25 teams. I think SMU was like what they played a few of them. I think they had to, in order to make the playoffs. They had to have played some top. I don't think they beat them though. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that they were winless against any top 25 teams. But
Yeah,
like,
SMU did not play too many big teams this year.
but if they did, they lost to them.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Alabama beat Georgia. That was huge. I think they beat Missouri, and they beat. Was South Carolina ranked?
When they beat them, I believe they were not.
Let me just look at this quick. But SMU had no business being in there. That's all I have to say. I like Boise. Boise won their conference. It was a weak conference. We could discuss that another day on whether we think that every conference should have a team in there or not. Their blue field is great, but that's all I have to say about those two teams. Nick, go ahead.
So originally, I was going to come on here and say that I am against the 12-team format. But I think if they were to reduce it, it does a disservice to some of those other, teams that are maybe ranked 9 or 10, but maybe had one bad loss early and then became a dominant force. Or you could exclude some of those mid majors that are having like a Cinderella year, like a Boise, who had the runner up for the Heisman Trophy in Ashton Johnson. So I do think the 12-team format as it's currently presented, now that there's 4 major conferences, does work. I think it's more of the, who was in and where they were seated. Clemson absolutely should not have been a 12 if you're going to base off of, the major conference winners getting buys, because Arizona State should not have been a top 14 then. Granted, they had Bo Scatabo, who's a beast, but for using that, like a lot of people would probably take Clemson over Arizona State if they were to go head to head. But at the same time, though, Arizona State and Texas was a banger. So no argument there. I think it's more on the committee to and they, they're in a tough position where they got to figure out what the best matchups are going to be based on, a ton of stats and what wins are weighted more greater than others. Alabama versus say, Indiana. Indiana lost to the national champion, and that's it in the regular season. So it's kind of hard to put a 3-loss Bama over Indiana, even though Indiana did not beat a top 25 opponent. So I just think, if you're going to keep it 12, that's totally fine. They just have to do a little bit better with evaluating. Like, to me, Alabama should have been in over SMU, and Clemson should not have had to travel for their first game. But other than that, I was kind of fine with it. So I have no real gripes.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, I'm with you on that. I did double check. Matt, you were right. South Carolina was ranked when Alabama beat them. The part that hurt, though, is they then turned around and lost to Vanderbilt. So, but no, I think when we look at, because I pulled up the top 12 teams, obviously not all 12 make it because you have conference winners, and you have teams that come out of nowhere to win their conference when they're not expected to, Arizona State. But I don't think that the committee got some of the home games wrong. I just don't like that we then put Clemson as the last team to come in when they were their conference champion, and we rewarded the loser almost in saying, oh, hey, we're going to put you in and we're going to have you play Penn State. If anything, I know it's a little controversial. I probably would have pushed all the teams down one place, and I would have given the home court to Clemson over Texas, and then moved Texas to the 6 and given them the home game over SMU, and just pushed everybody down one ranking so Clemson got that home game. Because I don't think that that's fair that we're taking a conference champion from the right to host a home game and send them on the road to the SEC runner-up. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And then we're giving a home game to an independent. So I think the committee mismanaged some of the things, but overall, I think it kept my attention for the 4 weeks that we had it, 3-4 weeks. The games were amazing. So I do think 12 is the magic number, but I do think that we need to find a way to, I don't want to say make it fair because it's probably never going to be fair, but we need to do what's right, and conference champions should be getting home games. That there's no question about that. So that's how I feel about that part.
Yeah, and then I guess going off of it, because they pretty much, like I said before, they dissolved the Pac-12, and a lot of those teams moved to the SEC, ACC, Big 12, Big 10. So a lot of those conferences are packed. So there's a huge, picking, basically. Are you all right with there being a Power 4 instead of a Power 5? And if so, do you think mid-major schools or programs now have to do that much more just to get, into the playoff, like a Boise State? Where do we go from here with those like mid-major programs? I think would be the question.
I think that the deck is always going to be stacked against mid-major teams. I don't think that it would have mattered if the Pac-12 dissolved for those mid-major teams, because those schools that are going to the other conferences are still those schools, if that makes sense. USC is always going to be USC. They're just going to the Big Ten. So I think it hurts them in the long run, because you could probably get away with the fact of, all right, so maybe the 4th best or 5th best team in the Pac-12 may not be as good as one of these mid-major teams. Well, now we're going and we're saying, well, the 8th best team in the Big Ten is still better than them. So now we question, well, why are we letting them in when there's an 8th the 8th team in the Big Ten would be 10 times better. And I think that's where they get hurt. And I don't think we'll see a scenario where we'll see multiple mid-major teams. I think it'll be Boise or whoever the highest ranked mid-major school is at the time, and that'll be it. I think the other conferences are too deep. And, you can look at coaching hires where people want to go to these schools for these certain coaches. NIL money, down the road. And I don't see it. I think this is mid-major is going to be a dying breed. And I think Boise might be one of the last teams to pop through.
Matt, any thoughts or agree, disagree?
Honestly, I don't have an opinion on this. I'm going to step back out of it. I think that you can maybe add a game, maybe, but again, that's a discussion for another day. At the moment, I don't really care. Maybe the arrangement of some of the teams in the conferences was a little questionable, like Oregon being in the same conference as Penn, but that's about it. I don't really have an opinion.
I think with the dissolving of the Pac-12 and conference realignment, they go hand in hand. And, football is king when it comes to college finances. And I think I have no problem in some scenarios with conference realignment doing what you need to do. But when we turn around and we dissolve basically a whole conference and those West Coast schools join an East Coast conference, I think that's where, we have to look and say, wait a minute, what are we doing here? There is no reason Stanford, Cal, and one more, I can't think of what it is, could be in the ACC. It's financially not responsible for their schools, and it makes no sense with the name. Not to mention your time differences. You go through 3 time zones to get to an away game every weekend. So I don't mind Texas joining the SEC. That makes whatever sense. It's right there. There were schools in Texas beforehand in the SEC.
Competitively, it makes sense too.
Yeah, Arizona joining the Big 12. It makes sense. They're right there. USC joining the Big 10. I mean, you can make an argument that's a little ridiculous, but you're still not going all the way across the country for multiple games. Now you do for Rutgers, because Rutgers is in the Big 12, Big 10, I mean, but you're not doing it consistently. You're going to Michigan farthest. I think football has kind of ruined the college landscape when it comes to schools being in certain conferences. We've taken rivalries away from money. The list goes on. And I think it'll catch up eventually. It always does. But in terms of a power 4, I would like to know who the 4 are, to be honest, because the ACC had an awful year, to say it the least. I think the school that everybody had hopes for lost game 1, and it was downhill from there in Florida State. Miami started off great, and then they dissolved. Clemson just wasn't the same. SMU, the fact that SMU is even in the playoffs should say something about that conference. I don't think conference realignment is the answer for some of these schools. And I know they're doing it for financial reasons, but it's going to hurt them in the long run because the schools aren't getting better. You're doing it for money. Certain kids aren't going to your school just because of the money. They want to go because they have a shot to win. But you don't have that shot to win when you join certain conferences. I'll give you an example. Years ago, Syracuse and Boston College left the Big East to join the ACC for football and in all sports. Can you tell me who the last great Boston College player was that came to the
Matt
NFL?
Ryan and Luke Kuechly.
And when was this?
2000. Well, Matt Ryan was what, 09? And Zay Flowers.
I said great. But my point is, you see what I'm saying? Like, Boston College hasn't done anything since they left the conference. Syracuse has done minimal. Pitt has done minimal. But we moved for football reasons and for money. it's not having the lasting impact that I think these schools thought it would. Your stadiums are still empty because your teams stink. You're not getting the recruits you think you're getting. Matt Ryan, Luke Kuechly are probably the last people to come out of Boston College that the average person even knew about. And it just sits there that is conference realignment, drastic conference realignment, let me say, is that the answer? And to me, it's no. It looks great if you're in the SEC and 1 week you're playing Georgia, then you're playing Alabama, then you're playing Texas, then you're playing LSU, then you're playing Florida. Yeah, if all those teams are ranked, it looks great. But the flip side, you go to another conference, and 1 week you're playing Duke, then you're playing North Carolina, then you're playing Wake Forest, then you're playing South Florida, then you're playing Boston College, Syracuse. Where's the ranking coming in? It's basically the rich got richer and the poor just got poor, or they got dissolved altogether. So that's my spiel on conference realignment. And I don't think it's a good thing. I think temporarily in some conferences it works. But for the most part, not so much.
No, yeah, totally, man. I think you made a very good point about financial incentives for a lot of these schools to join major conferences. Money will constantly pour into college football, for good or for bad. And, I guess it is what it is,
Yeah.
We'll see what happens down the road. But I think for now, though, at least with the playoff format, I think we're all in agreement that we're okay with it with 12.
Yeah. Yeah, 12 is a good number. I mean, whether it was the BCS or whether it's 4 or 12, someone's always going to be left out, and we're always going to feel somebody else was deserving. I think with 12, we look further now at those 4, 5, and 6 teams in conferences, and that's going to be the question of, do they deserve it?
As long as it doesn't expand any further than 12, I'm okay.
I think we'll sit at 12 for a while, and then down the road, as usual, we'll probably look to expand.
I hope that's in the distant future, though, because we got to get a decent sample size of the 12-team format. I think it was a success this year. I mean, we saw some teams that haven't won in a while, or at least it was a brand new championship game for the first time in a while. So
it was, and I think, I'm gonna throw it out there, and I think people understand the two most hated fan bases in college football played for the national title. And as much as it pains me to say this, I think making Ohio State and Notre Dame both relevant with that opportunity again is only going to make college football even better.
It's a fair point. Shout out to all the Fighting Irish and Buckeye fans that are listening, if you are listening. Hearing that you're the most hated fan base in college football. But
they know it. They're the Dallas Cowboys of college football.
Hey, Buckeye Nation, enjoy your national championship victory. But on that note, I think we're going to transition. We're going to lay off the pigskin a little bit, and we're going to go to the hardwood here, because recently we just got through the NBA trade deadline. Obviously, the big one being Luka for AD. We're going to save that one for another time, as the Mavs and Lakers are getting ready to play in a couple days. But there were quite a few other trades that I think we want to maybe talk about or highlight here. And we just want to maybe just, again, field out the question of what do you think's the big – someone just dropped something. But what do we think may be the most impactful move, a move we like, we don't like? I know Matt's been itching to get back here. So, Matt, I'll start with you. What do you think about what's going on with these trades? What do you like? What do you not like? And what are your thoughts?
Okay, so I'm gonna start with the trade that didn't happen, which was the Mark Williams for Dalton Connect or however the hell you say his last name.
Next four, baby.
Anyway, I'm happy that trade didn't happen. I know the Lakers needed a big, and they just picked somebody up off an undrafted free agent or somebody that wasn't even signed to a team. but they need Luka. As much as I love Luka, he's not a consistent, efficient scorer. Same with LeBron. LeBron's not a consistent, efficient scorer because he's not a shooter. He'll sit back there and shoot 11 threes and sometimes go 1 for 11. Sometimes he'll get hot and go 7 for 11. Austin Reeves has really picked up his game, but and Rui isn't a consistent 3-point shooter. They don't really have like Dalton Neck was known for his 3-point shooting in college, and obviously his percentage in the NBA is a little lower than the Lakers probably want. I think it's like mid 30%. But just to have a player like that to be able to just dish to in the corner, or you're driving the basketball in and you dish it out, somebody that can consistently shoot. I was happy for the Lakers as I am a fan to keep Necht as a consistent shooter on the team. Cam's going to go more into the Hunter trade. I think that was huge. I think potentially a lot of these trades that happened, like the Jimmy Butler trade, Golden State's looking better with him. I think they're 4-1 after the trade for him. Draymond Green and Jimmy look like they've been playing together for 10 years. That's how good their chemistry looks. Steph, I feel like you could play with anybody. He could change the pace at any time. De'Aaron Fox, I think, got traded. Where did he go from the Kings to the Spurs?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yep. Nope, you're right.
Okay.
That's right.
Excuse me. I think that's a big potential trade. I don't know about this year because of Wemby being out, but that's one to look at. De'Aaron Fox is a great player, and we'll see if Chris Paul is going to stay after this year to run it back with that team. Prayers and hopes for Wemby to get past the blood clot soon. Another trade that I think is interesting was that package with Kuzma to the Bucks. I'm not the biggest fan of Kuzma. I think he's taken a step back, but I think he could actually help the Bucks this year defensively, considering that they were struggling to, get any sort of offensive dynamic consistently with Giannis and Dame being on and off the court, and Middleton taking another step back this year. So that trade was interesting to me, and I think it's something to look out for. I might bounce a couple of ideas off you guys after, but those were my main few trades that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think all those trades have been interesting. The one that got me the most, and Nick and I were talking about it when it happened, actually after the fact, because Nick, I'm gonna throw him out there, is a Knicks fan, and the Knicks didn't do anything in this trade. What?
Don't steal the thunder, Cam.
They didn't do anything at the trade deadline, but the Cavs are sitting atop the East, and they made a trade, and to me, got even better, adding DeAndre Hunter, because they see the big picture. We're not looking at anybody else. We're looking at the Celtics to try and win the East, and I think adding Hunter makes that game a little more intriguing. I did have the Celtics winning in probably 6. I would be very surprised if that game did not go 7, that series. And to me, at this point, I think it's a toss-up. I do think DeAndre Hunter moves the needle that much for them.
They were great before the trade.
And that's the scary part, is that they were really good. And then, they go down to OKC and get spanked. But now they made this trade, and questions have to arise. Well, the Celtics didn't make a trade, but the Cavs did. The number 1 team in the NBA made a trade and got better. So I don't know who the Hawks GM is, but he should probably be fired for trading.
Oh my God,
DeAndre
the Hawks are a disaster, man.
Trading him to the Cavs, but no, I think that trade to me swung the pendulum. And Cleveland should be in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Celtics. But a trade that goes under the radar, and I don't know if you guys have been watching him since he's come back and mentally refocused, but Ben Simmons on the Clippers. He's been playing pretty well since, and obviously they got killed tonight as I make these comments, but he's been playing pretty well on the Clippers since that trade, and actually even on the Nets. I think the no expectations for him may have found a way to revitalize his career, because he looks like he's playing carefree, like he was playing in Philly back when they didn't have expectations.
Well, the thing with that is we always thought that it was going to be Ben and Joel Embiid. We're like, oh, who was really the one not moving the needle for the team? Was it Ben or was it Joel? They got rid of Ben, and Joel couldn't move the needle. Ben obviously couldn't do it with the team that was constructed in, what was it, Brooklyn he went to?
He mentally just didn't show up in Brooklyn.
Yeah. And the fans destroyed his confidence in Philly.
Yeah.
So,
and then I think when the team's
in a defensive-minded team right now. I mean, the Clippers when Kawhi's healthy can make noise on the defensive end.
He has no expectations, and I think we can't belittle that and say, he's not himself. The fact that he has no expectations, he's playing great. Maybe that's what he needs to make him play the way he's been playing. Because the ball was so high for them. Don't forget, it took Kawhi Leonard's four or five bounce corner 3-point shot to end the Sixers season and sent him to the NBA Finals. Or we might be talking about a different outcome, because whoever won that series was going to win the NBA title. So I think the comeback from that never happened. And then they had the issue with him being under the basket and passing it instead of making the layup. Irony, Joel Embiid had that same issue when they lost the other night. So, I think things have finally come full circle for him, and I'm happy he's doing well in LA, because I think he is a talent.
Well, he's coming off the bench too.
Yeah, but he was coming off the bench in Brooklyn too this past year. But if you make it to the NBA, you are somewhat decent. They're not scrubs.
Defensive Player of the Year a couple times, or at least in the conversation.
In the conversation,
so he was an All NBA defensive player.
That's what. It was.
So he's a good player. It's just he needs the confidence to do it, and I think he's found that with James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, Powell, and the owner, Steve. What's your last name? Steve. And to me, the trade has been great. In terms of De'Aaron Fox, absolutely they will. In terms of De'Aaron Fox going to the Spurs, I made the comment, and I'll say it again. I don't think we'll see the best version of De'Aaron Fox and Wemby until Chris Paul is traded or let go. So I do not believe moving Stephon Castle to the bench was the right decision, because he was playing great. Your team was playing great. And he can learn. And I think the offense is faster with him and Fox in there than it is Chris Paul. Because let's not forget, the reason they wanted Chris Paul out of Phoenix was the offense was too slow. So I don't see slowing it down just because Wemby is 7'2", 7'3", right? 7'3"? 7'3".
Wemby's like 7. He's tall.
Yeah, he's tall. Slowing it down for Wemby, that's not how I think they're going to play. So I think the writing's on the wall for Chris Paul this summer. I think that he will get traded to where he probably wants to go. I don't know where that is, but I think he'll get traded or they'll release him. And then they'll look to the future, because they'll have all young players under the cap. But those are the trades I looked at. And obviously Jimmy Butler to the Warriors, I was not opposed to it. I think anytime you play with Steph, it'll be fun to watch. I was curious to see how he played with Steph, because he's not a great three-point shooter, and he doesn't move without the ball as much, but in the games that I've seen, he's played very well, and I think he's finding his niche, and I think if they make the playoffs, it'll be a different version of Jimmy Butler, because we all know what Jimmy Butler can do in the playoffs. But for the first time in his... What?
Go ahead. Finish your point. I'm going to jump right in afterwards before Nick goes.
No, that's fine. I was going to say, for the first time in his career in the playoffs on his team... Wait, before I finish that, he's not going to be the best player, and I think we will see a different version of Jimmy where he's not getting the best defender. It'll be interesting to see how this pans out for him this playoffs.
So yeah, that's what I was sort of going to jump in with, is that he needs to also mentally be okay with being a number 2 or number 3 on the team. Draymond has taken sort of a Nikola Jokic role in facilitating beyond Steph. He's done this over the past 5 or so seasons, but more and more he's taking control of the team. Whether that's good for the team or bad for the team, that's a conversation for another day. But I watched the Golden State game today, and it seemed like working in is kind of like the Luka LeBron situation, where Luka was kind of just sitting there, getting a feel for the team. We'll have to watch over the next few weeks whether Jimmy is just getting a feel for the team's chemistry, or if he's actually okay being a number 2 to Steph.
Yeah, and I think he's got an opportunity in Golden State to do something he hasn't done with Miami, and that's, I don't want to say be happy, because I think he's happy when he first got to Miami, but from what all reports say, it's different when you play with Steph Curry. I think he's got a chance to grow even more. And if we thought Jimmy was good in the playoffs when he was the number 1 option, I can't wait to see what happens when he's the number 2 option. When Steph is getting double teamed, the best defenders chasing Steph around, the screens are built for Steph. Steph cuts and gets doubled or comes off. It's going to be so much fun to watch. And I think the matchups will dictate for Jimmy Butler. There might be nights where he has Draymond Green numbers, 10 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists. There'll be nights where he has Klay Thompson numbers. He might have 36 and 6. And I think that will be the interesting thing for the Warriors, because they will go as far as Jimmy Butler will support Steph. So,
yeah, it looks like coming into today, the Warriors were, I believe, the 9 seed. So they're sitting at a play-in spot right now.
mm-hmm.
But like you mentioned, if they can put it together, that's going to be interesting to see what happens with that dynamic, especially
I think Dallas was also in a play-in spot. So to get that tiebreaker was huge for Golden State.
Yeah, it looks like 6 is the spot that's not in the play-in. 6, 7, 8 are all a half game separates them. 31 wins, and Golden State has 30 wins.
I think play-in games are 7 through 10.
7 through 10.
Yeah. So,
and then Phoenix is still there too. So, they're 11, Phoenix, but they're not. They're hanging around.
There's one more team that I didn't mention, and I kicked myself because I should have mentioned it, because, Nick, we were talking about it, and that's Zach LaVine to the Sacramento Kings.
Oh my gosh.
What?
I'm getting ready to rant, but go ahead.
For those who don't know, my thought and theory process was I wanted Zach LaVine to go to the Knicks because I feel like they need a dynamic 2 who can help scoring with Jalen Brunson. And I know everybody loves the whole Villanova story, but at the end of the day, it's only getting you so far. And as of today, you're 0-7 against teams you need to beat. So
I was going to mention that
Zach LaVine. What?
I was going to mention that stat.
Okay, well, forget I said it. Let Nickel say it. But to me, Zach LaVine would have moved the needle, because in these losses, what we're seeing is Brunson get his points. We're seeing Towns get points, hopefully, because he's been killed in a few, but mostly get points. We're not seeing that other scorer. And I know people want it to be OG Anunoby, but that's not really who he is. Zach LaVine is a bucket. Maybe when he was in Minnesota, we looked the other way and thought he was just a dunker. But when they let him go and moved him to Chicago, he is a scorer. And the Knicks need offense and defense. And I think him with Tibbs would have been the scenario of, all right, Jalen Brunson's having an off night, but who can take over that? And that to me would have been Zach LaVine. And I think New York fans would have fallen in love with Zach LaVine at the Garden, the way they fell in love with Karl Anthony Towns, and you would have had that semi-big three of LaVine, Towns, and Brunson. But instead, we're seeing Zach LaVine play in Sacramento with Malik Monk and DeMar DeRozan. And that three-headed monster has been fun to watch, but it's just not going to go anywhere in the West. And Nick, I will let you say what you want to say.
So, there was a combination of players that I wanted for the damn Knicks. I wanted either Zach LaVine or Brandon Ingram, who was traded to the Raptors and got a 3-year extension. So tells you about Brandon Ingram. And I wanted Ben Simmons. And to clarify, Ben Simmons actually was not traded. He was bought out of his contract. So the Clippers got him for free. So anyway, going off of Cam's point, the Knicks needed that third scorer that could play the 2-3 combo type vibe. Zach LaVine would have been my first choice, but Brandon Ingram with that length, his ability to create for himself and score, I mean, would have been great. And then Ben Simmons being someone that can come off the bench even, and he provides that defense where he's 6'10". He's an all-NBA defensive player, former All-Star. The Knicks don't have a bench outside of Miles McBride. And if he's not hitting shots, forget it. Mitchell Robinson hasn't played all year, though he's getting ready to come back, apparently, soon. Who knows?
Yeah,
but
whatever.
The fact that they did nothing and they're 0-7 against the Celtics, the Cavs, and the Thunder combined, and they also lost at home to the Lakers without Luka or AD. So the Knicks right now are pretenders. They are not contenders. They are second round at best. They did nothing. And I agree, Cam. I think Boston and Cleveland are your clear-cut top two teams in the East. That should be your conference finals matchup. And I'm excited to watch it because I do think DeAndre Hunter puts them ahead of Boston. That's my 2 things. That's all I got.
No, I think that's where we are.
I think you're doing a disservice to Campaign.
No, I'm not.
Disservice are we doing to Campaign?
Campaign, I think, is a great off-the-bench player. I've had the pleasure of seeing him live twice, and he's been great in both. I saw him today because I watched him versus Boston. He didn't really do much. He played, I think, he actually wasn't in the game much because Tibbs was running the offensive lineup, the starters just to the ground. I'm pretty sure the starting lineup was in there 90% of the game.
No, they were, and McBride and McBride.
I think McBride was the only one that was on the court more than, or close to a starter's minutes. But I think Campaign is a great change of pace player.
But you know what? I will say this. I will say Campaign is a good player. But what he's not doing on the Knicks is he's not moving the needle for you when it comes to what you need. He's averaging 7 points, 7 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 assists.
And he's only 37% from 3.
And today he had 5.
Which is average, but it doesn't move the needle.
So and Matt, that's I think where I'm trying to say on this, and I said it in the beginning of the year, and everyone knows it in the NBA circles. You hear him talk about it all the time. Tibbs plays his starters way too much.
Yeah, it's too much.
But when you look at the production they get from their bench when they need it, it's not there. Today is a perfect example. The best player off the bench had 7 points. Listen, and if we ask the average Knicks fan, who that was, nobody would even have guessed who it was. And I think that's where where it's coming from. Of if you would have taken some of your bench players and went to Chicago and offered a package, you could have moved somebody from your starters to the bench and had more offense because you're not getting anything off your bench right now. And that's where the problem is. You lost 142 to 105 to the Cavs. And Brunson had 26 points, Towns had 23, and Bridges had 14. So your starters didn't play bad, but you didn't have anybody else. Actually, OG Anunoby and Precious Jr. did not play well. They had 5 and 7 points respectively. Precious 10 rebounds. Okay, maybe you're not the scorer, but you took 10 shots. You only made 3, and none of them were threes.
Not take 10 shots in the game.
So I'm looking at it. I'm like, as presently constructed, they don't have enough to do what they need to do.
Well, my point is if you gave more minutes to the bench players and you didn't have them coming in the game colder than an ice pack, they might be able to do something a little bit more. But when you're putting somebody in their first minutes or 2 minutes into the second quarter, I mean, you're far off the warm-ups.
No, I and you know what? I agree, but that's on coaching. But at the same time, that's on Tibbs, and that's why I opened it up saying he does not play his bench players. But the bench players he has on the bench, even if he did play them, I'm not expecting them to do more than their season averages because that's who they are as players.
McBride is good.
I don't think.
I think Campaign is good, whether you guys do or not.
He's good. We're not saying he's not.
Shamet has shown promise, but he's also shown that he can't be consistent. I don't really know much other of the Knicks bench, even though quite frequently we've been seeing them more and more because they've been getting blown out more and more by the big teams, Boston and Cleveland specifically. But today they showed a little bit more fight in terms of the I think it was the third quarter or so. The Knicks had come back and almost tied the game. I think it ended up being like 95 to 92. They showed some heart, but they don't have somebody that can come in and finish it for them off the bench. Not that they need somebody off the bench to finish it, but if somebody needs a break, you don't have anybody that's reliable to go in the game to keep the pace up or change the pace.
And that's the problem right there.
That's the problem.
And it's also, again, we don't care if you're a Knicks fan. You shouldn't care what Indiana does. You don't need to really care what Milwaukee does, Detroit, Orlando, Miami, Atlanta, and Chicago. You beat them. You're concerned with the 2 teams ahead of you who you've not beaten.
It's only them. I mean, the Knicks aren't great against teams over 500 this year.
I'm giving them benefit of the doubt. They are, but I'm giving benefit of the doubt because the teams that are over 500 that they're worrying about are the teams they need to worry about.
Yeah,
and that's Boston and Cleveland. And the problem is it's not that you lost to them; it's you've gotten killed by them, and it's not been competitive. That's where the problem is. If your bench came in, or even if your starters, we'll say that, when your starters come out for rest, even if that bench player doesn't score, you need to make those minutes on the court worth it. And the problem is they're not worth it. Campaign may play great against every other team in the league, but he hasn't shown up against Cleveland, and he hasn't shown up against Boston. And at the end of the season, that's how we are going to look at the Knicks and judge them. Unfortunately, that's the way the game is played. Campaign played great at Michigan State and played great in Phoenix. But he has not played well off the bench in big games as a Knick in one of those top 2 games that he needs to play good in. That's not his fault 100%.
Yeah,
like we said,
when you're getting 10 minutes and you're coming in colder than an ice pack, that's
Tibbs does not play his bench players, but at the same time, you know this as a bench player, so you need to make your minutes worth it. You can't come in the game and go 1 of 7.
So I thought personally, because Robinson's been out the whole season, if not the majority of the season,
I don't think he's played this entire season.
Well, there you go. I thought that they should have went out and gotten Nurkic at minimum, but I think he went to Charlotte.
Yeah, they traded him to Charlotte.
You know, they needed a big. I mean, Ben Simmons could have qualified for that in a way because he's 6'10". But they needed somebody else. Yes, but would Tibbs have played them is also another question.
That's the golden question right there. And at the end of the day, that's the issue that we brought up with the Knicks is not that they don't have a good team. They have a good team. They're right where they should be as probably the third best team in their league. But there's a huge gap between 2 and 3. And the thing that is worse for them is that the best team went out and made a move at the trade deadline. So any gap that might have been there, it just got even bigger. And I think you'll see wholesale changes on the Knicks this summer if they do not make the Eastern Conference Finals, which I do not expect them to. And to be honest, I don't expect their semifinal matchup to be close. I would not be surprised. It'll be a gentleman's sweep 4-1. Because as of right now, it's the Celtics.
Yeah.
So if they want to lose games so that they can hope the Celtics play somebody else, that might be the best scenario for them. But as of right now, presently constructed, they play the Celtics in the second round, and I do not see them beating them. And actually, their first round matchup would be against Detroit.
Yeah.
So they got a lot of questions they need answered, and a trade would have helped a lot of those questions. Right now, we can blame the coach, and we can blame the personnel. And that's it. We're not blaming Jalen Brunson because I'm not a huge fan, but I will give you this. He has played out of his mind. Karl Anthony Towns has done what he needs to do.
Cat also is a no-show sometimes, though.
Who?
Cat.
Well, he's never had to be. He's always had other players on his team to where he didn't have to do stuff. Now he has to. So we need to see it for a full season. We haven't seen that out of him. So that's why he started the year off great and he's kind of tailed off a little bit. But I don't think we've seen enough from Mikal Bridges. Was that trade really worth it at this point?
5. Was it 5 round picks for him?
What?
Yeah, it wasn't worth the amount of picks. I do agree with the trade.
Yeah, I don't think it was worth the picks. I don't even know if I really would have made the trade because I think Mikal would have gone to New York anyway. OG Anunoby, I think you overpaid for him, but that's neither here nor there. He got what he got based off of timing. And your center spot is up in the air. Do you have Mitchell Robinson, who I don't feel is the answer anyway? I've been saying since he's been drafted that that's not who you really want. And he's not done anything to show me that I'm wrong or that any Knicks fan should want him coming back. You had opportunities to go get Nurkic. You could have gotten Vucevic from Chicago. You could have gone and got Mark Williams if you really wanted somebody.
Mark Williams is an injury disaster. I'm surprised he even suited up to play against the Lakers, but I haven't even really heard of him. When he does play, he's decent, but you just got dunked on.
Well, he's still a lot of people have been dunked on LeBron, but he's still giving you more minutes than Mitchell Robinson has this year.
Yeah.
And I think what's his name? You can go to out to Portland. They've got like 5 centers. So I think the options were there. I just think they didn't do anything, and now we're playing the shoulda, woulda, coulda game because we all know they should have made a trade at the deadline,
and they had the picks to do it,
but they didn't do it. And now we're questioning, well, how far is this team really going to go? Because the best 2 teams in the East keep blowing you out by 30-plus points in some of the games. How good are you really? Like Nick said, are you a contender or a pretender? You are pretending.
They're a pretender. Even today, they were down 21 at half. They start to rally in the third quarter, and then they still lose by 15.
And I was watching some of it. Yeah, I'm watching some of it, and you're rallying, but look who's on the floor when you're rallying. The Stars are getting a rest. So you're just buying minutes. They come back in, and the game's back up double digits. So
You're talking about the opposing team starters,
yeah.
like
So
Boston's bench.
Yeah.
First of all, Boston's bench would be a starting lineup for a good amount of teams in the league.
But that goes to your drafting, and that goes to your free agency, two of which the Knicks have not done. So, that's your front office. We knew the Celtics were built to win, and they didn't care when they fired Udoka. We're like, well, they got a championship team. Okay, well, let's see it. They lost to the Warriors, came back, won.
I'm just looking at Boston's bench right now. They got Sam Hauser. I mean, he's a bench player. He's great though. He could shoot the three. Al Horford was a starter in the league before, veteran player. Peyton Pritchard might be sixth man of the year. I mean, he's definitely the best backup point guard in the league at the moment. They got Derek White. He was a bench player, now is a starter. Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Porzingis, who's been huge for them. Former Knick. They got a great team.
The thing about the Knicks, the thing about the Celtics is everybody knows their role. They don't do more than they're asked to do. We know Hauser's a great shooter. We're not asking him to drive to the paint. We're not asking him to make decisions. We're saying, look, catch the ball and shoot the damn thing. Peyton, we know you get the ball at the end of the clock, and we know that you're a point guard. We're not asking you to put up 40 points. We're asking you to distribute the ball, hit an open three, and do what you need to do.
He didn't even
and
do
don't come out
today.
What?
Peyton Pritchard didn't even do anything today. I think he just made like one shot.
Yeah, but it's his overall defense and everything on the court too. It's not just his shooting. But that's what I'm saying. They don't ask players to come out of who they are.
True. Al Horford will hit a shot when you least expect it. He'll just
Al Horford,
just a veteran player, clutch.
Well, Al Horford double, 13 points, 10 rebounds. I mean, you do what you need to do, and that's all you can do. But that's why that team is so good. That's why the Cavs are so good, because it's balanced and you do what you're supposed to do and no more. Don't try and come out and do something you don't need to. With the Knicks, that's different. You need to because you're not playing your bench. So you need your starters to play heavy minutes. You need your starters to rebound. You need your starters to do everything so that you can stay in the game. And actually the best scenario I can look at with that, and I was curious about it earlier when we were talking about it, is the turnovers. The Knicks had 16 turnovers. 10 of them came from your starting lineup. Sorry, my bad. 7, 9, 10, 11 of them came from your starting lineup. You're not going to win a game with 11 turnovers from your starting 5. So and actually, nobody in the starting lineup had a positive plus minus. Obviously, you lost the game by a lot, but nobody had a positive plus minus. The best plus minus in the game, who played double-digit minutes, let's see, was...
Probably Talent.
I'll give that to you. What?
Probably Cat.
No. It was Campaign.
Cat was negative.
Campaign. Oh, nope. Sorry. Yeah. Your bench. All double-digit 20-something in starting, except for Brunson, negative 17. Tibbs got to go. And I know this summer, all the New York talk shows will be talking about it. Tibbs has to go. He is a great assistant coach. Give him defense scouting report and let that be it. But as a head coach, he's not shown any organization, Chicago, New York, anything that says, hey, you can take us to the promised land. Your defense will be great, but your offense is going to be terrible. But can we really say your defense is great when you've given up 142 points?
142 points is crazy. Although it's on an elite offense, still, you got to be able to contest something.
Okay, well, you gave up... let's put it this way. You gave up 115 points to the Raptors. I didn't even know they could score 115 points. But your defense isn't bad. You only gave up a Magic 103 points to the Magic. I mean, you lost. but you gave up 103. So you can play D. You just can't do it for periods of time because you only use your starters.
Have they played the Heat recently?
I'm not sure. Let me look.
Because if they played the Heat post-trade deadline and if they let up over 100, then their defense is bad.
I'll say this on my last part about the Knicks, and then I'll let Matt. I'll let you say something, and then Nick, I'll take it back. It's just they are who we think they are, and if you think that they're any more than that, you're going to be drastically disappointed when the playoffs come. And I think that's how I'm going to leave that. I've been saying it all year, but that's how I'm going to leave it.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I think with the way that Tibbs is running the team, with the the starters all getting 30 plus minutes a game. I mean, you're just asking for a major injury to happen, and knock on wood, hopefully that doesn't happen. But if it does happen, it's pretty detrimental to your team because you don't have any chemistry with anybody else that's coming to the game. Sometimes Brunson will dribble the air out of the basketball. He's been great, but there's times where he has no idea what to do with the basketball when he comes up the court. Josh Hart, I have really nothing to say badly about him because he is the most aggressive rebounder I've ever seen at his position. Precious is a young player, has a lot of potential. He needs to go a little softer on the glass because he could be easily averaging close to 20 points a game with the looks that he gets, but he practically spikes the ball off the glass every time he goes up. OG Cam says he's not an offensive player. I've seen him in person drop 30. He has potential. Whether he can do it consistently, that on this team, probably not. Maybe on a team like the Nets, he would be able to, sort of like a Cam Johnston. Who else is in that starting lineup? I think I went Bridges. Yeah, the only thing. Excuse me, still getting over the flu. The only thing I can say about Bridges is I don't like the amount of picks that they wasted for him. I felt like they could have gotten a lot better in the offseason with the amount of, would they give him 3 or 4 first round picks? Was it, Nick?
I think it was 5.
5? Yeah, that's insane.
Was it 5? Hold on.
It was big. I remember it was a little too much. But obviously the first round pick isn't as vital to an NBA team as it would be an NFL team because there's only 2 rounds in the draft. Less people, but 5 first round picks. You couldn't have saved a couple of them for a Levine or a Nurkic, or even you could have pushed for Jimmy Butler. Really, if you really wanted to push 5 first round picks out the door, come on, Jimmy Butler. You could have given 1 or 2 for Ben Simmons.
Brandon Ingram.
Yeah, it looks like they did.
Ben Simmons got bought out. We could have got him for free.
Yeah, you could have, but honestly, I haven't heard about somebody getting bought out of their contract in a long time. The fact that was a move that you just enlightened me to that today. I thought he got traded.
Yeah, the Nets bought him out of his contract.
Yeah,
to cut him.
Just real quick, it looks like he was 4 unprotected first round picks, 2025, 2027, 2029, 2020, 2031, a 2025 protected Milwaukee Bucks first, a 2028 first round pick swap, a 2025 second round pick, and Bojan Bogdanovic.
Oh yeah, you got rid of Bojan
who,
when he was with the Knicks, averaged double digits off the bench.
Yeah.
I was going to say, was actually playing very well at the Knicks. There's your front office.
They missed him desperately in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
They would have steamrolled through Indiana with Bogey.
Well, we'll never know.
No, we won't.
But before we hop off, speaking of, because I know you guys were mentioning a bunch of points, someone in this podcast is on a streak of over-under bets on basketball games. So, Mr. Baywood, if you would take it away and enlighten us on how you make money so that we can be profitable, knowing the Knicks are going to lose going forward.
Hold on, let me pull up.
Knowing they're not going to the conference.
Excuse me. I promise that most of the coughing that I've been doing, you guys have been hearing, but I've cut it out. I mute it every time I have to cough. So yes, you guys might be hearing me blow the mic up with my flu cough, but it's probably going to be muted at the podcast. Go ahead.
Matt's playing through the flu like Jordan. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, not LeBron, but Jordan.
All right.
The flu games.
So I started this streak on the 21st of February. I hit. I'm just going to go through the picks that I made, and then I'll describe how I decipher the over/under picks for the NBA.
I think that's a great idea.
I went through. I did under 236.5 for Detroit Pistons versus the Spurs. Won that bet. Then the next bet I picked was a college basketball game. It was Oregon versus Wisconsin, men's under 150.5. That cashed out. The next bet was Kentucky Alabama under 180.5. That cashed out. Over 227.5. Charlotte versus Portland the other night. Portland scored 141 points. You could have won that with Charlotte scoring 70. Then I had my first bet of today, which is going through now, is Memphis versus Cleveland under 250.5. It's tied 54-54 at half. Or it's actually not halftime yet. It's the second quarter. They're tied 54-54. So that one's still active. But the two other bets that I hit today were under 231.5 New York Knicks versus Boston and under 229.5 Dallas versus Golden State. So yeah, nice little streak going. The way that I decipher it is there's obviously you look at matchups in a way. Before I pick, I always look at who's starting and who's not. There's times where I've gotten burned on that, where I see like a Kyrie and a Luka aren't playing, and when they were on the Mavs, and then their bench would just go like Gafford would go for like 20. Their whole like starting lineup would hit 20 plus points, and and they would cash the over. But there's a strict line where if I see a point total over 250, I'm immediately betting the under. 250 points is really hard to total. It's not a foolproof plan because there are teams that'll score 130 and 130 versus each other. Overtimes kill that. But you never pick a game thinking that it's going to go into overtime. So when the line is at 215, I'm betting the over. When the line is at 240 or 245 plus, I'm typically leaning the under. And then anywhere in between, I'm really looking at the matchups. Like today, for example, the line was under 231.5. Boston, New York. The New York hasn't been able to score much against Boston. Boston can score a whole lot, but I was really banking on the fact that the Knicks weren't going to get over 115 points. Dallas versus Golden State, that was a sweat. It was pretty much the same thing. It was like under 230. But the only real consistent scorer on the Mavericks is Kyrie and sometimes PJ Washington. So there's that. I don't know if you guys have any questions and what I can clarify more. I know Cam's not a gambling man, but Nick likes to dabble in it every now and again.
So I always bet that every game goes to overtime. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, speaking of which, since now, please gamble responsibly. Anyone listening,
be a degenerate.
Don't be
gamble.
a degenerate.
Gamble your life savings, please. Gamble it. Do it. You only live once.
Please be responsible. Do not gamble more than you can afford to lose. On that, though, I did hit a 10-pick parlay today. Would you like to hear it?
Of course.
So now I only won $25, but because I just picked a bunch of favorites and it worked. So I took the Celtics money line. Well, actually, I took them live in the second quarter, right before halftime, because I figured that was cash money. I had Youngstown State winning today against Green Bay in college basketball.
What was that, minus 400?
Minus 720, baby. So I had both Creighton men and women winning today. Men were minus 1100, and the women were minus 1350. So doing good. I had Duke women. They won today. They blew out Syracuse. South Carolina beat Vanderbilt in women's basketball. Oklahoma blew out Arkansas. Ole Miss made me sweat, but they won by 2 points over Missouri. Juju, I don't really like you that much, but thank you for beating Illinois today. And we had Alabama women over Auburn.
There we go.
We hit 10 legs today across NBA, men's college, and women's college. And last night, I had a 20-pick parlay that I got 19 out of 20 on.
Yikes. The
only one that lost was Albany losing to New Hampshire. If I hit that one, I would have won $600, but that's all right.
20-pick parlay is crazy, but the odds being only $600 to win. How much were you betting? $1?
No, I bet 14.
Oh.
Yeah. So nothing crazy, but
all right, do we want to go through Monday's games quick?
Sure. Let me see. So this is all via DraftKings. Please sponsor us. So we got 1, 2, 3. So there's 5 that are up right now. Miami at Atlanta, which over/under on that is 225.5.
I'm going under. Oh, no.
There.
I'm not going to go under because Atlanta.
You're going to go.
Well, 220.5. I go over.
It's 225. You're going to go over 220.5.
Yeah, I'll go over 220, but if the line's going to move on that. I'd say the under is playable at 225.
Okay, perfect. All right, next up we have Chicago at Philadelphia, 226.5.
I tend not to bet the Sixers.
Fair enough. And they're playing the Bulls at home. So.
It's all 113 each.
Fair. Next up, this is a doozy right here. We have the Brooklyn Nets at the Washington Wizards. Over/under is exactly 215 flat.
What do the Wizards have, like 5 wins?
Maybe
9.
They have 9. Wow, I did not think. I know they have Jordan Poole. That's about it. He stinks.
Yeah, well, I think they have Chris Middleton now too, right?
Are they in Washington or are they in Brooklyn?
They are in DC.
I'd bet the over.
Well, they're number 1 for the Cooper flag.
I'm doing this blindly with no matchup in front of me. Also, no injury report in front of me. So these are just guesses.
Well, in all fairness, as long as Jordan Poole's playing, you probably wouldn't know anybody else on the team anyway.
Cameron Johnson, or it's Cameron Johnson or
Chris
Cam Johnson?
Actually, you know what? Hold that thought. If you pull up the who's out and estimated return, looks like Cam Thomas is out.
Thomas is the one that I was talking about before. Excuse me, not Cam Johnson.
Looks like Cam Thomas will be out. D'Angelo Russell will be out for Brooklyn. And for Washington,
so I'm not touching that team.
They say their estimated return is tomorrow, but who knows because they're not good. Chris Middleton could be out. Malcolm Brogdon could be out. I'm assuming Marcus Smart has been out because I have not heard his name all year. and looks
Yeah,
like
Marcus
Alex
Smart's been
Sarr
hurt.
to be honest. So they're both missing a decent amount of players.
Is Minnesota and OKC playing Monday?
No, they play tonight.
Tonight at 9:40. That over-under's 228.5.
That's tonight?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing
Tonight
that
at
on
9:40.
Oh, shit. They play a back-to-back then. That over-under is what, 227?
228.5.
I'm probably gonna bet the over on that.
Yeah, I'm thinking over too.
You want to take?
I think that game's gonna be fun. Sure. I mean, as long as you pay for it, that's fine, and I still get half. It's totally fine, man. What else do we have? We have the Charlotte Hornets at the Sacramento Kings in the late night in Sacramento. Over/under on that one is 229.5. I'm thinking the under on that one.
That would be a game I
don't
would
like
the under
Hornets
on all day.
Yeah. And then lastly, we got a decent one here. We got the Nuggies at the Pacers with an over/under of 245.5. Shootout.
Literally. 245.
Typically, I would hit the under all day on that. I would take the under on that.
Yeah,
because
it looks
have
like
a crazy
Nuggets
offense, but
yeah, defensively they're not.
Yeah.
And Nuggets are 3.5-point favorites on the road.
In
that one.
Denver, won 8 of the last 9 or 9 of the last 10? One of those two stats, and
plus they just got blown out, so Jokic is out for blood.
Jokic didn't do anything. Jokic shot by the fourth quarter. He only had 5 shots on the board.
Yeah, he's out for blood tomorrow.
He's gonna have a huge game tomorrow.
Incoming triple-double.
Yeah, it's funny. We're saying he didn't do anything. He had 12 points, 10 assists, 13 rebounds.
No, he had a triple-double, but it was the quietest triple-double you've ever seen.
No, I know, but that's the funny part about it. We're just like, it's just most rebounds of anybody on the court.
Is there a Jokic to get a triple-double bet that we could take?
Yeah.
Oh, they have a correct score one. What? I didn't know you could do that. Plus 15,000. That's the one I'm taking right there.
Go on Bovada. You can bet everything.
Really? What is it called?
Bovada. It's
Bovada?
Outsourced. You're betting overseas at that point. Your money is safe, but you're betting with actual Indian tribes.
Bovada, if you are watching this, please sponsor our podcast. That said, our money's safe, so we trust you guys.
Listen, it was safe for me.
So, yeah.
IRS, please do not watch this. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Speaking of the over-under here, Detroit Pistons, right now, the score, there's 33 seconds left in the fourth quarter. Detroit's up 141 to Atlanta 140.
140. 281 points right now.
That's crazy.
Nuts. That's insane, dude. I wonder how many 3-pointers were attempted today in that one.
All right,
between the two teams?
We're sitting at roughly 2 hours right now. The time flew.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good spot to wrap it up. I think we should do final thoughts here. Cam, we'll start with you. Any predictions or anything random that you want to state about the sports world? What are you feeling?
You know what? I'm gearing up for March Madness because March is right around the corner. So I think that's where all eyes will be turned. I know we have a few more weeks of basketball or a few months of basketball left. Baseball will be starting soon. Hockey's back in action, but March Madness is about to take center stage, and it's going to be I think March will be great. Early April for the Final Fours will be great, both on the men's side and the women's side. You know, we're in Connecticut. We're used to to championships on both sides here, so I know we all have invested interest. Can't wait to see what Cooper Flag is going to do. Obviously, Duke was my pick once he committed to win the national title. As you know, Nick, I picked whatever team he was going to go to this year was going to win a national title because I knew he was that good.
Yep.
It also helped that he was looking at really good teams that he would have made an impact on. But Duke is my rolling. I'm rolling with Duke right now since the beginning of the year to win it. And I can't wait to see where Cooper Flag goes. It looks like Washington's going to win the bet as of right now because they are just awful. I'm hoping Brooklyn can slide and he goes to Brooklyn, but it looks like he might be going to the Washington Wizards. Maybe he'll stay in school for one more year and not go to Washington, but I highly doubt it.
All right, so Duke for the men's national championship coming from camp. We should call this like our magical genie predictor, or we'll come up with a better name. But yeah. Baywood, your turn. Predictions. Something that has to do with the Steelers, probably.
The Steelers?
Maybe. I don't. I'm just thinking that's
Oh, you didn't get the breaking news?
What's the breaking news?
What breaking
news?
They
just re-signed Kenny Pickett.
Oh, this guy. I was gonna say, thrilled when I was thrilled when he got traded.
I'm teasing. Anyway, floor is yours.
My only comment that I want to say for futures right now is Mavericks Lakers. I think Luka is knocking on the door of a 40-point game. They're probably going to match up with on him PJ Washington for the majority of the time because Kyrie has got wants nothing to do with Luka. I think the over-under is going to go over. I think it's sitting at 227 right now, or 227 and a half. I think that's what ESPN had it open at. I'll take the over all day. I will probably take the over on Luka points, rebounds, and assists. And yeah, that's that. I think Luka's going to be out for blood for what Harrison did to him. Nico.
I think that's a good one, and I'm actually going to go to the only sport that I really know that well, and that is football. And I don't know if these rumors are true. Actually, no, I know they're true. Because the Rams have given Matt Stafford permission to seek a trade. And I'm going to make a prediction that Matt Stafford will be the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback next season.
I'll be hyped.
That is my prediction.
The only thing is the Steelers need a receiver. I will pay T. Higgins whatever he wants.
I think you guys are going to get Stafford.
Yeah, we could take Stafford. We'll give him, re-sign Wilson, trade Wilson, do whatever. I'll take
Stafford. It's not going to be enough, but you'll get me with Stafford.
Oh, I'll take Stafford. Give me Cooper Kupp with him.
You're asking a little much there, but
is Cooper Kupp a free agent?
No. But he has also been given permission to. Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe you'll get him too.
If we get Matt Stafford, I'll take Cooper Kupp. I'll take Cooper Kupp and T. Higgins. I'll get rid of Pickens too.
All right. Well, we shall see. But for those of you listening, thank you very much for your time. Listening to three guys talk sports for a couple hours. We hope you found something fun, informative. Give us some feedback. Give us some stuff to talk about. Catch us next Sunday. We're going to try to do this every Sunday. And we'll be back at you with some more topics to discuss. And this has been the Busted Coverage Podcast. Anywhere you receive audio playlists and podcasts. Thank you and good night. How was that outro?